Welcome to the Common Ground Podcast, where stories connect, perspectives collide, and purpose is found in the middle.
Every week, we sit down with unique and inspiring guests that come from all walks of life. People who challenge the status quo, overcome the odds, and live with intentionality.
Whether you're driving to work, on your morning walk, or just looking for that spark to ignite your week, you're in the right place.
Welcome to the Common Ground Podcast with your hosts, John Fletcher and Sydney Kurt.
Please take a moment to listen to this disclosure from the Common Ground Podcast. The Common Ground Podcast is dedicated to exploring commonality among individuals with diverse perspectives. Our guests may present unique worldviews related to health, psychology, and overall well-being. Please note that the Common Ground Podcast does not directly promote or endorse any specific ideas, concepts, or actions discussed during our episodes. Listeners are encouraged to approach the information shared with discernment and to consult with their mental and or physical health providers before making any changes to their health or wellness practices. The views expressed by guests and hosts are their own and do not directly reflect the opinions of the Common Ground Podcast. Your well-being is important, and we advocate for informed decision-making. Thanks for listening.
My past choices was the evidence that I can leverage moving forward.
That even though I've made the most out of turning my pain into purpose, that my kids don't have that same example. What did that look like for you?
So mental wealth is how you feel. Purpose is what you practice. So at 39 years old, I've never smoked. I've never drank. I've never put my hands on a woman. I've never done things that I experienced because I know what it felt like being on the receiving end of those emotions.
Welcome to the Common Ground Podcast, where stories connect, perspectives collide, and purpose is found in the middle.
Every week, we sit down with unique and inspiring guests that come from all walks of life. People who challenge the status quo, overcome the odds, and live with intentionality.
Whether you're driving to work, on your morning walk, or just looking for that spark to ignite your week, you're in the right place.
Welcome to the Common Ground Podcast with your hosts, John Fletcher and Sydney Kurt.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Common Ground Podcast. It is your host, Philly. You can call me John. I'm here with our partner in crime, Sydney. How you doing, Sydney?
I'm here. How are you?
Awesome. And we got a special guest with us today, Mr. Jeremy Rodriguez.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Happy to be here with you guys.
Welcome. Good to see you again.
We are definitely happy to have you today. And as always, I always love to start out with a little humor. So I want to tell you what happened yesterday with me. I'm talking with my daughter, and we're just chilling. And she got a little, like kids do, get a little attitude-y, right? And so I told her that she needs to check her attitude. And her response to me was like, she looked at me and she said, "For product complaints, contact the manufacturer."
So you called her mom?
Yeah. But her mom didn't want to hear it. She tried to put the blame on me.
Yeah.
But welcome, everybody. We are so happy to be here with you today. Just to quickly introduce our guest of the hour, Jeremy, he is a father, a husband. He's been a life coach since 2012. He is a speaker, an author. His book is titled A Better You. His mission is to empower others to think a powerful message of resilience, emotional growth, and authenticity. He teaches people how to lead with purpose, to reprogram limiting beliefs, to practice their mental and emotional well-being, and to take decisive actions towards a more fulfilling life. With us is our special guest, Mr. Jeremy Rodriguez, and we will be speaking to you about mental wealth mastery, healing habits, and owning your own identity. So again, welcome, Jeremy.
Thank you.
We're glad to have you.
For that introduction. I really, really appreciate it. But like I say in any podcast interview, your a reputation is good, but you're only as good as your last at bat. So my goal is to really make this one count with you guys, and I'm looking forward to just like really enjoying this conversation. I think you guys have done a great job from beginning to end as far as how you structure your podcast, the way you go about making an interview happen, the details, the attention to details, the professionalism. So it's really an honor to be here being interviewed by you guys, and my goal is to be an asset to your library for sure.
Thank you. We appreciate those kind words. It's all Sydney.
Still waiting on my adoption papers so that John can officially adopt me.
They're in the mail.
So, what'd you say?
They're in the mail.
They're in the mail. I got the book. I didn't get the adoption papers. I'm just waiting. I'm waiting. I can make jokes about adoption with my history. Just for anybody that's listening and knows me, I can make the jokes, okay? I invented it. Jeremy, you've got quite the background, like just your life story. And one of the things that I've really related to in your story is that the past doesn't define who I am. But for our viewers and listeners who don't know you, just let's start with just enough of your story so that we can paint the picture of who you are. What did early life look like for you?
So I was in a privileged position where I had two individuals that raised me, that did the best that they can despite them having real mental and emotional battles, right? So a lot of people have their own way of coping through things. Unfortunately, my parents chose the substance route. So early on, I was affected by the instability of people's emotional well-being, right? One minute somebody's on a high, the next minute they're on an extreme low, and that inconsistency had me on fight or flight mode the majority of my childhood, right? And the way I dealt with my pain, the way I dealt with my struggle was through anger that led to violence. I wasn't sure why things were taking place. So that confusion and me not knowing really led me to overthinking. And then the overthinking led me to having just massive anxiety. And that anxiety would put me in a depressive state because of how much I was overworking my mind and my emotions despite being so young. So out when violence was no longer working for me because I had to confront consequences due to that violence, I figured if I can't be violent with other people, then I'll just choose to be violent with myself. So I decided to take it upon myself. If I couldn't deal and heal the storm that was happening within my mind, I didn't want to have to deal with that for the rest of my life, which led me to attempting to take my own life 15 times. Not thinking about it, like I physically have attempted it, from trying to hang myself in a closet to trying to take my head off with a pistol, right? And after the 15th time, I realized that this was not the answer, because if it was the answer, I would have succeeded at it a long time ago. So during this process of curiosity, I really was introduced to personal development. And at that point, I realized that this wasn't a death sentence. It was just a part of my story.
Mm.
And because it allowed me to be curious, I just became super invested and just becoming more aware of me and the possibilities that a human being can have if they indulge in the right information. And as I
Yeah.
began to indulge in the right information, I started to see very subtle changes in my mood and my behaviors that gave me enough evidence that what I was doing was working, which that led me to share the things publicly, because I was just excited, because where I come from, personal development is a foreign language. And I'm like, man, who else doesn't know about this? And I was fortunate to share it in a time where I was still healing. So the passion, the pain was so felt through my messaging that people translated that as conviction, not realizing that I was just trying to heal myself through the messaging, trying to add value to somebody's life that was probably in my same or similar shoes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a powerful message.
When did you first realize that your pain could become purpose?
When I was in a Tony Robbins seminar, Unleash the Power Within, in Texas in 2012. So Tony Robbins was a part of the process of saving my life, right? Like I indulged a lot of it in his information because he was just speaking a language that I was able to understand. And the first day that I was there as a fan. The second day that I was at the seminar, I was looking at him with more lens of curiosity. The third day, when I started to hear a little bit more deeper about his story, I'm like, man, if Tony Robbins created this movement because he happened to go hungry in his childhood, what type of movement I can create with all of the branches that I have in my arsenal. And at that point, that's when I realized the light bulb switch that I I really think I can do this. Cause in basketball, despite me being so angry and violent, I was naturally a leader. Despite me having so much negative emotions within me, I will still be the person to tell you, hey, don't do this, don't do that. Despite me not being able to stop myself from doing it, I will try to help people stop them from doing it. So at that moment, when I left that seminar, I'm like, man, like I feel like this is something that I can do. That's when I created my business card, which was a helping hand. And then from there, as I was in my personal development journey, I was just attempting to help people find theirs as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. It's always cool when you have like a come to Jesus kind of moment where like something just hits you in that type of environment. It's a different type of impact than, I mean, I've had some profound epiphanies that I implement or incorporate into my self-talk track now. And you've said something too that I'm curious. It's not like maybe you did get it from that seminar, but you've said your greatest wounds can propel you forward, and it's something that I believe is super true. But what taught you that truth?
So I feared judgment the majority of my life. And I was dealing with a lot of shame because of all of the past decisions that I would make. And what I realized is that my past choices was the evidence that I can leverage moving forward. I did this, this felt this way. I now have a reference on to make a different choice. And when I came to terms that every human being is doing their best based on what they understand and what they've lived, I said, why am I being ashamed of something that shaped me? If it wasn't for my pain, if it wasn't for my experiences, I wouldn't have the intensity and the willpower plus the passion to want to help another life. So my pain allowed me to have massive empathy towards the same people that I used to judge. We judge people, right? And then I say to myself, man, I'm judging those people, but those people also have a past. What gives me permission to judge those people? Oh, I was judging those people because I wasn't willing to be accountable to my actions and I wasn't willing to face my own music. So once I became comfortable in my skin by building up my self esteem, I was able to confront my truth, which allowed me to not judge other people, but actually be there for other people.
Sure, sure.
As you've talked about your past, I think it's most people who have gone through what you've gone through and experienced the things that you've experienced, a lot of them will blame their environment. They'll blame their situation. Um, but you talk about taking personal responsibility, personal development. Where, when did that shift happen that, that, or did you never blame your, you know, environment for what was going on? Was it always something that you personally took on? Or was there a moment where you started to stop saying, I'm going to stop making excuses for blaming the things going on around me and start taking personal responsibility?
Right. So the love that I have for my parents was so profound that I had to figure out a way to translate their behaviors in a positive lens. So when I would understand what was happening, like the withdrawals of the alcohol, the withdrawals of the substances, when I was starting to understand that, I'm like, man, imagine that. I still had food on my table, clothes on my back, a roof over my head, despite my family going through hell internally. So now I was a victim because I was a victim to my programming because I didn't understand that I was even in a program. But once I understood with this personal development that, wait a minute, this is this can define you or it can really create you. I started to look at my parents. I started to look at their substance abuse. I started to look at their suffering. I started to look at their pain. I started to look at the domestic violence. I started to look at all of that as my parents were so selfless that they sacrificed their life their happiness, their peace, their success to teach me everything that I didn't want to become. So now they became my tour guide on not necessarily what to do, but what not to do because I didn't want to have that same outcome. So at 39 years old, I've never smoked, I've never drank, I've never put my hands on a woman, I've never done things that I experienced because I know what it felt like being on the receiving end of those emotions. And
Yeah.
that has allowed me to have a beautiful, healthy relationship with my parents until, I still have my mother, thankfully. I lost my father on March 31st of this year at 9:24 in the morning, but I was able to look at him in that casket and I was able to come to that terms knowing that I gave you my heart as your son. And as much evidence as I had to judge you, I chose to take your imperfections as a way for me to go harder at my imperfections.
Yeah. I'm gonna ask one more question on that, and then I kind of want to shift into this concept of mental wealth. But the reason I'm asking this question is because I think that there's a fine line in the things that you've had to go through to get to a level of maturity where you can understand that the lessons that they taught you, that you can love someone and recognize that the role model that they set was not a positive one in their actions. You can also recognize that when somebody struggles with an addiction, that it's not a reflection of their love for you, it's something that's going on in them. And being able to separate those two things is really profound. But how, if at all, did you have to learn to draw boundaries in your relationships with your parents when you came to an age where you have kids now, correct?
Correct.
So, I mean, like coming from somebody whose mom was a drug addict and my mom's no longer around, but if she was, my relationship with her, especially in light of raising children now, even though I love her dearly, or would if she was is still here, that relationship dynamic would be very different so that I know that even though I've made the most out of turning my pain into purpose, that my kids don't have that same example. What did that look like for you?
So that's actually a very good question. That's a very deep question. So what I've realized more than anything is that I cannot change the person, but I can change the quality of the interaction. So
Mm.
once I understood what human needs my parents were after, I would go into the environment thinking to myself, I am going to have an internal competition on who's going to impact who more. So when I would go into my mom's house, my father's house, I was loving on them, affirming them, pouring into them, making them forget about their circumstances because of how much I was pouring into them. And when it got to the point that at some point the conversation pivoted and it started to go spiral into a negative place, if I couldn't redirect it immediately, I would discontinue myself from that environment. So what I ended up doing is I intentionally taught my parents that when I'm in this environment, I'm going to pour into you. And the amount of time that you get from me is based on the engagement. Right. So now if my mom loves spending time with me, my dad loves spending time with me. So they know that Jeremy doesn't tolerate certain things. Is there a time to process? So I would ask my mother when she would start to complain, I would ask her, Mom, do you need permission to vent? Is this a moment where you need to vent? We will process that, but I would immediately redirect the energy and try to do it and try to put something positive into her to kind of like just change that energy. So like I became in the beginning, it was a struggle because I would go tick for tack. Once it would go negative, I would attack. But what I realized is that once I understood frequency, anytime I was consequencing their expression, I was driving them deeper down to the shame. So I'm
True.
like, how can I love on my mother and always focus on her flaws despite me wanting the best for her when all I'm doing is bringing her and my father down to shame, which is making them feel more defensive, which is causing the interaction to be a negative one. So if I know that my mom and my dad are already experiencing shame, they're already dealing with addiction, who am I to drive them further into that shame? No, I would go in there and I would literally tell my mother to this day, when I talk to my mother, I say, Mom, like, you are the best mother in the world. I love you so much. And every single time me and my mother talk, she tells me, because of your words, I'm still alive. Because imagine that. Imagine you're fighting your battles all of the time. you raise children, right? You're doing your best to raise them despite you struggling for dear life. And then your children only remind you of your flaws. This is what we do as a society all day, every day. We're judging people, judging people, judging people. And it's like, man, listen, if we're gonna judge, I'm not calling you down. I'm not calling you out. I'm calling you up. And with my mother, like, and my father, I would just remind them of like, I am this way because of you guys. And I would give them the flowers over and over and over and over again. And that allowed us to have the space where now I can say, I'm going to go spend an hour with my mom, and I can spend that full hour because I've been able to sharpen the skills of redirecting her energy and bringing her up the frequency chart, at least when she's with me. When she's not with me, it's out of my control, which sucks. And that's where a lot of my suffering came. 15 out of the 15 times that I tried to take my life was because I couldn't take my mom's pain away. I couldn't take my father's pain away. So the fact that I didn't have an answer, despite me doing my best to like exhaust all efforts for them to feel happy, I'm like, man, like, how can I live knowing that the two people that brought me into this world that loved on me unconditionally despite their struggles, how can I see them suffering and not have an answer? And that would literally kill me. Like, I was deteriorating internally. I'm talking about literally deteriorating internally. And I just told myself, you know what? I can't do something about them, but I could do something about me as a father to my children. And really a lot of people will say, look at the cup half full, and they'll say, you gotta turn a positive into a negative. I mean, a negative into a positive. When you're seeing people that you love overdosing in your face, when you're seeing people that you love really hurting themselves, when you're seeing people that you love really destroying their life, and you not have an answer to them, it is a lot easier said than done to turn a negative into a positive. And this is where I birth the mental wealth mastery, because we're gonna experience life, right? We're gonna experience life, and when you understand the human needs, right? We got 6 human needs. Once I understood that the growth and contribution are the real spiritual needs, those are the meat of life, I'm like, damn, wow, I cannot believe that I was chosen, that I was chosen to have this level of responsibility where I'm going to have to deal with all of these experiences to sharpen my skill set to be able to add massive value to the world because of the love that I possess in my heart. Despite my hurt, I always had a genuine heart, and people felt that. And God, and I believe that like I was seasoned all of my life so that I can really relate to those people that have those inner wounds that they just do not know how to address. Right? Like, I love having people come into my life, feel hopeless, feel powerless, and me be able to help them shift their perspective on their past to the point where now the trajectory to the life and the life of their children changes completely.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I get a little bit animated because for me, life coaching and speaking is not what I do, is who I am. And it's like a lot of people, they sound great, but my thing is that like I really live this. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, I have to go see my mother tomorrow. I gotta go see all the bruises from her falling. I have to go see all the holes on her walls. I still live that. There's people that go through trauma, they grow up, and all they have to do is recover from the trauma. For me, when the trauma's still in your face, when you're seeing your father that you love with all of your heart literally lose his lungs, his kidneys, his heart, his mind, and his life in 31 days right before your eyes, like, that's real shit. You know what I'm trying to say? So like a lot of times people will take my intensity and my passion and they'll judge it and they'll call it aggression, not realizing that I have to do something with this pain. Like, I have to do something. And like the fact that I have this pain and I'm still able to show up for myself and the people that I care for and the people that don't even know me every single day, I eliminate anybody's excuses on why they can't execute their dream and their passion.
Yeah. No, I get that, and I can appreciate somebody that lives it out. That it's not just something that is a switch that you turn on for a certain type of person that you're around. I mean, like, I wear a lot of different hats in coaching and in managing a business that's much more logistical than coaching, and I wear all of those different hats. And then there's some people that it's like, this is what I do, this is who I am, and so I can appreciate that in somebody's personality and in their character. You said a couple different things. So you said like the launch of your business was in 2012, correct?
Correct.
And then it didn't take off till 2022. And I actually love that part of your story, because a lot of people, when it doesn't start to work or like the math isn't mathing, after X amount of time, they throw in the towel. So what changed for you from 2012 to 2022?
Beautiful. let me just give you some context on that decade, right? Sure. I'm sharing this stuff. I'm excited. People are resonating with my messaging online. So I figured, hey, I mean, people are asking me for advice already. Why not do this thing? But what I realized was that I had an identity crisis because a part of me wanted to help, but a part of me was so used to being hurt that confliction didn't let me to have the conviction that people thought I had. So I looked at like I had conviction because I was loud and aggressive, but in reality, people that understand body language could understand that that was just a very loud, insecure man that hasn't addressed his wounds. So like when I was going through this process, I remember putting events together, Sydney, where I would literally put a flyer together. I would, man, it's crazy. Like I would put a flyer together, I would market that thing, and I would show up to event after event after event after event, and nobody would be there but my family. And then it wasn't until I started working with a coach that I started to realize I had an identity crisis. My belief system was out of whack. My frequency was out of whack, right? I was trying to win, expecting to lose. So I had all of this confliction within me, and that lack of clarity was felt by the universe and the universal laws, which led for me to attract people that were supporting that lack of conviction, right? Because at the end of the day, life is a mirror, it's not a window. So like everything that I was encountering was just showing me what I was doing, the stuff that I still needed to do, because every experience in your life is a checkpoint. Like right now, this is a checkpoint. I'm pursuing my dreams. I'm pursuing my passions. I happen to be with John and Sydney. This is a checkpoint that's telling me that I am well on my way. Right? I'm already in the dream. Over there, the checkpoints for me were, you still got work to do. You still got work to do. And my ego was telling me I could do it on my own. My ego was telling me you don't need help. My ego was telling me you need a coach, you need another person to tell you what to do, until I realized that how can I attack something that I can't even identify?
Yeah.
How can I attack something that I can't even identify? So when you're working with a coach, they're able to see your blind spots, right? The same way Phil Jackson can see Michael's blind spots, Phil Jackson can see Kobe's blind spots, Bill Belichick can see Tom Brady's blind spots. The coach was able to see my blind spots, and it was stuff that I was throwing under the rug over and over as a defense mechanism, because I was still not ready to identify that truth. I was willing to identify truths that were convenient, that I could really identify, but there was a lot of truths that I was unwilling to truly identify. And it wasn't until the coach told me, hey, listen, you think you're great. Once you start to resolve this, you will become for real, who you want, who you intend to be. And at that point, once I was willing to invest in myself, like I've already done it through seminars and stuff like that, but I never did it through coaching. Once I invested in myself, it created such a level of confidence and such a level of self-respect that that was like my next level to like, no, bro, like this is really where you're supposed to be. And it just 2022, things started to reshape itself. 2023, massive momentum, especially when I launched my book. Then 2024, and now in 2025, I have more momentum than I've ever had.
That's awesome. And so let's get into like what is, and let's start off by this. What is uh mental wealth?
So mental wealth for me is being so mentally and emotionally abundant that you're no longer dependent on reality changing for you to feel good. So a lot of times people are striving, people are operating in this desired frequency, always wanting. People want a lot of times because something is missing, or they're thinking that the thing that they create is going to create a feeling that they're not experiencing. Once I understood that everything that I'm going to do in life and every decision and every outcome that I get is for a feeling, I told myself, I'm going to cut out the middleman. I'm going to become so mentally and emotionally abundant that by me doing that, I'm no longer going to be emotionally dependent on reality changing. And once I'm no longer emotionally dependent on reality changing, I'm able to truly create a life of straight up passion and fulfillment. And every decision is now based off logic because emotionally, I no longer have to get fulfilled. So now there's
So
two folds to this, really quick, John. There's two folds to this. So now, not only do I get to create because I'm creating from a full cup, but now I get to truly enjoy the fruits of my labor because of how emotionally abundant I am. There's a lot of people that are financially successful. They have the career, they have the cars, they have the houses, but there's still a lack of fulfillment because they haven't nurtured their emotional home. And that's why, like, you hear mental health. Mental health, when you think about mental health, it automatically has a negative connotation. When you think mental wealth, automatically it creates curiosity, like, what do you mean about mental wealth? And that's what I wanted to present to the world, a unique proposition. I wanted to create a brand that had a unique proposition with a unique purpose and a unique promise, because if I can help people become so internally abundant that everything else becomes irrelevant, now they're going to be able to live a life that they truly are obsessed living.
Right.
so what would you say is the difference between mental wealth and purpose?
So mental wealth is how you feel. Purpose is what you practice, right? I'm practicing my purpose right now, right? That's an actual behavior. Mental wealth is a feeling. So now you combine purpose with the internal wealth. Now you're operating in the right level of consciousness while you're practicing your purpose.
Sure.
That's actually
So
a
they
good
kind
question.
of
Nobody's ever asked
exist
me that.
together, and one's a verb and one is something that you carry internally.
And I'm gonna tell you why, right? This is actually so deep. So there's a lot of people that are practicing their purpose in the wrong state, in the wrong consciousness. So now what happens? You're not enjoying the process. You're waiting for an outcome for you to feel a certain way. You're waiting for a validation for you to feel a certain way. And my thing is that it doesn't the dream come true the moment that you decide to pursue it? And that's my thing. Like, so I'm like, yes, there's struggles, there's challenges, there's marketing, there's sales, there's systems, there's processes, there's all of that to grow a business. But isn't that the price? Isn't the price that, like, that component of the business? So when I learned that I was doing the right actions in the wrong state, the quality of my life and my purpose was compromised because I was doing it from the wrong position mentally and emotionally. Once I was able to align the mental, the spiritual, the emotional, and then the action, now, like, is literally like bro, it's like a process that becomes so fun and enjoyable because now the problems are no longer problems, they're opportunities. Because the human need of growth is what I'm after. I'm able to stay in that level of consciousness in that peak state because I know that any problem gives me an opportunity to extract something that I don't currently possess. And if you look at it from that lens, there's no way to lose.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you mentioned you work with people that on the outside have it all. Like there's people come to coaches that from an outside perspective, society will say this is the top 10, 5, 1%, but inside they still feel empty. Like in your experience working with that type of demographic, that type of clientele, why is this happening?
So when you don't have money, money is everything. It's a priority. What you don't realize is that there's a lot more components to life than money. When you're pursuing money, you can identify that, right? So what happens a lot of times, and this is one of my own quotes, is that if who and what you're sacrificing for becomes a sacrifice, are the sacrifices worth it? So now you got a lot of these people that are massively successful financially, they're mentally unsuccessful, emotionally unsuccessful, relationship wise unsuccessful. Their kids want nothing to do with them. They're in the brink of divorce, if not already divorced. They don't have no type of balance in their life. And then they get to the point where they're trying to compensate all of that void by buying, 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 buying. And then they get to the point where they realize the feeling that they're after can't be bought. And they come to me and they tell me, Jeremy, like, I'm living in this amazing mansion. I have cars that people die for. I have all of these things. I still feel empty. And I go, okay, let's start here. What's the emotional home? And a lot of these people, believe it or not, despite them being massively successful, because success defines them and validates them, they go from being massively successful to now operating in fear and desire, because now they're concerned about losing the success because they've already lost everything else on their pursuit of success.
Yeah.
And I definitely can relate to what you're saying. I've been around people who have definitely said, it's not what you do, it's the results that you're looking for. And they definitely don't have the mental wealth that you're talking about. And I can see them, they're the people who end up in that place where they're highly successful because they did something results based and achieved those results, but never emotionally were bought into it. It was all results driven, and there's a whole society that believes that that's how you become successful, and I disagree with it. I was part of an MLL that taught basically that, and it wasn't my passion, and it wasn't something that I could do because I need to be passionate about what I do. But you talk about mental wealth, and you talk about cups being full. um it's impossible to always be full. It's impossible always to. I know some of the people who I know musicians who loved music, got into music because it was their passion, because they loved it. And it became a chore. How do you keep that mental wealth, um keep that cup full?
So that for me is about creating rituals that prioritize you. Right? So a lot of times when you're a musician, when you're successful, when you're doing a lot of these things that require your time, what tends to happen is that people tend to forget about themselves, and they end up living a life of people pleasing. They put themselves in the back burner, and then the quality of their internal well-being gets compromised because of that. So one of the things that I advocate for tremendously is that it's you before the world, regardless of how much the world wants your time. When you really get to the point where you value you, where you have a self-esteem that's unbreakable, you have a self-image that's indestructible, and you have this bulletproof self-respect and self-acceptance, what happens is that you revolve your career around you. You don't revolve you around your career. And that's one of the things that I do. So, like, for example, I, for my business, I choose to work in these times. I choose who I give my time to, and when I'm finding myself wanting to bridge the gap between where I am and where I want to be with where my finances, I don't go outward. I don't think marketing. I don't think strategy. I go, what? How can I become more valuable? Because at the end of the day, the difference between somebody that's making $1 million a year, $100 million a year, is the level of conviction and the skill set that they possess, right? Because at the end of the day, to become successful is the skills, the beliefs, right, and the characteristics. So now, what a lot of people do is they go outward to try to make more money. What I've learned is I go inward. I address what I have to address. I modify what I have to modify, and I create habits like working out, like meditating, like visualizing, like spending time with the people that I love. Because the more I love my life, the more I love me, and the more I prioritize me, the less I care who prioritizes me. And the more detached you become from that, the more of an asset you become. And now you got people that are willing to negotiate the price and give you more because of your time, because of your willingness to prioritize yourself and not take yourself off of the pedestal. I'm when I tell you, if you notice this intensity, I feel so passionate about this because a lot of people don't realize, even though they're successful, because they're still very insecure, they live a life trying to people please all of the time. And I study success so much, and I extract so many things that people regret, that I don't have to reinvent the wheel on what people regret and what not to do. I take those lessons at face value. I make the modifications in my own life, and then I live a life accordingly. So like I did a status today on social media, right? Where it's a lot of people will confine their life to society standards and what's right and wrong according to other people. I don't believe in that, bro. I believe that at the end of the day, you have to create a life that you genuinely love waking up to. And we already know that suffering is inevitable because we're going to lose people. So my thing is that I want to try to enjoy every single second of my time on this earth, which means as long as I'm not compromising anybody else with my integrity, right? And I'm not doing something intentionally to hurt somebody. If I'm hurting somebody because I'm prioritizing myself, those are people that I want nothing to do with. And as you become greater and as you do more and your time is required more from other people, you're gonna have to start making difficult decisions. And there's no way for you to make difficult decisions, implement boundaries, and say no with no explanation if you don't have that foundation set under you. And this is the
Right.
stuff that I like to teach, man, because this is the foundation that really determines how far can you grow and how fast you can grow. And because it took me a long time to get here, I understood through those mistakes that it's like I was working ass backwards. I was working from the outside in. And once I shifted from the inside out, like the level of momentum has shifted tenfold.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of people, I think that sometimes people too, their identity becomes like, speaking on those people that have wrapped their identity in their success. I think that people do that subconsciously too, to a degree, because I know that in my coaching, I've worked with people that very genuinely seem to not be able to identify the problem until we start pulling away at the layers of consciousness to get them to come to this deeper root of what's really going on. And that's another thing that you've studied is the law of attraction and subconscious. So like, how do you connect those dots for people, not just the upper 1%, the ones that seemingly have it all? I've just found that ironically, it's most difficult to connect the dots for the ones that do seemingly have it all.
Right. So so when I'm having a good conversation with these people, I start to study them and I started to study their body language and I start to ask them questions like, why are you doing what you're doing? And where did this come from? And when you're able to, so most people lack self-worth. So when your worth stems from the success that you created, your identity marries that concept.
Yes.
But when you think about the behavior, what the behavior is yelling is that I still haven't figured out a way to feel significant within myself. So the significance, which is the human need, right? The need for love and the need for significance is what drives most human behaviors. So when you think about somebody's behaviors and you think about like, okay, so right now you're still after the need of significance. So I asked him this question: if everything was stripped from you, how would you feel? Jeremy, I would feel like shit. Okay, let's start there. Because when you're still emotionally dependent on all of this validation externally, right? And your identity is tied to this reality and this fame or this success, that means that you're still emotionally dependent off of that. So now what happens? Do you know how many people go into a deep depression when they go from being highly sought after, extremely popular, to now pretty regular person? That transition becomes difficult. Why is that? That's because these people became so emotionally dependent on that constant validation that define who they are. And so for me, what I do is I help people get their power back. It's like, listen, as great as you are with this, if you believe that you're greater without needing that, that foundation is going to allow you to live your life freely because you're not living your life based on trying to satisfy all these people because your identity is tied to what comes with that, which is the reward. And then when you take people from significance to growth and contribution, I love that transition because I'm like, man, so think about this. The more better you become, the more aware you become, right? And the more diverse you become within you, that growth is going to allow you to contribute. So guess what happens when you're able to contribute to another life? Not necessarily entertain another life, but genuinely contribute to another life. That gives you a fulfillment that makes you feel proud of you. Attention doesn't necessarily make you feel proud of you. You can have moments and stuff like that, but it serves like a band-aid. When you help people transition from one need to another, it's a surgical process to the point where now people don't have that codependency on society or people outside of them.
Right.
So I want to go into something that we may not agree on.
For sure.
And even when I first heard the term come from you, they say mental wealth, right?
Yep.
The first thing that when anybody thinks of wealth is they think of dollar signs. They
For
think
sure.
of financial. And um can see, I'm trying to figure out how I want to ask this question. But basically, does mental wealth equal financial wealth? But I want to get into a little bit more deeper than that. Because to me, one of the things that I've said to every guest that's ever come on to in our meetings is I say if I would make not $1 off this podcast, I'd be the happiest person in the world. This isn't to me about money. One of the things me and my ex-wife used to fight about is finances, because I don't care about money. I really don't care about money. It's probably a detriment to me a lot, because I'm more willing to spend, like, I'll spend money because, listen, it doesn't hold value to me the way it holds value to other people. I believe if I am mentally wealthy, that's more important than being financially wealthy to me. And I could care less about having $1 million. Now, listen, I'm saying that, people, I want this podcast to grow. I want to make money. The more money I make off this podcast, the more I can give up my job and the more I can dedicate to doing the thing that I love. So I know there's a real correlation to finance, and I'm not trying to be that dumb or stupid. But
You got me for the finances. Don't worry, I got you.
but I'm not financially driven. And I find that I've lived a pretty, like, if you look at me, I look unhealthy, but for the most part, I don't stress out about things. I don't worry about things. I'm not worrying about, like, what's going to happen is going to happen. And finances don't control me. So I'm not chasing the dollar always. So what does financial freedom versus mental wealth, how does that all play a part? And I don't know if
Right.
you agree with where I come from.
Oh well, the thing is, so there's a couple of moving parts to that thought, right? The first thing is that you don't need success to be mentally wealthy, right? You think about people in Dominican Republic, people in Ecuador, people in Argentina, people that have nothing tend to be the happiest because of their perspective on life, right? So I feel like being mentally wealthy and not being emotionally dependent on you needing to be successful to be mentally wealthy, that's foundation number one. So you have that. But one of the things that I would like to propose to you is it's great to not care about money, right? But you also have to ask yourself, how much of my perception on money is a defense mechanism because I haven't really figured it out, and that's the story that has you connected with not prioritizing money because of the unwillingness to overcome those limiting beliefs to actually create that wealth. So it's beautiful that you have the foundation where you don't need the success to feel good. Now that you're operating on that beautiful level of consciousness, now it's, what do I have to pick apart within my subconscious mind so that my limitations doesn't be the reason why I sabotage the podcast's growth. Because what a lot of people don't realize, they do a lot of the right things. So, like, for example, you guys, the way you go about this podcast, the interview, the pre-screening, all of that is wonderful. But if there's some type of limitation within you financially, or there's some type of limitation within you, and you have this ceiling, until you don't address that ceiling, the podcast is going to have a cap. Right? So you have to sit with yourself and you have to ask yourself genuinely deep down inside, like, what do I believe about money? What's my relationship with money? I know that I'm disconnected, so I don't need the money so that I can feel so that I can feel good. But now let me be honest and transparent with myself. What was the relationship with the people that raised me. What was their relationship with money? Like, how do I feel about money? When I think about money, what comes to mind? Because a lot of unanswered question when it comes to money is the reason why there's not abundance flowing into people's life, especially when people are talented, right? When you got people that are extremely talented, it's like you're talented, right? So it's not a lack of skill. You have great character. It's not a lack of character. Now, what is it about your belief system and your identity that's compromising your growth, right? That's leveraging money and the disconnect from money as a way to keep you stagnate where you are.
So let's dive into this real quick
Sure.
because I think this is cool. I'll be transparent. I'll be vulnerable here on a podcast. I think deep down there is a fear that money would change me. If I'm totally honest, the same way actually that losing there's and I've realized this with my weight loss journey. There's part of me that does not want to lose weight because I don't want to become fake. Like, I don't want people coming to me now who would never have come to me to be my friend or to want a relationship with me because now physically I look good, but they were never attracted to the person to begin with. Like, in my head, they're the conversations I had. Like, do I really want to be this skinny guy who will just end up getting, because I know myself and I'm like, I'll get taken off by these girls and I'll be I'll be Mr.
Be a
GQ if
stud.
I was. No, I
You'll be
know
a stud,
if
buddy.
I was skinny, I'd be a.
He's being
And
late to the podcast because he's got a hot date. I'm gonna be stuck here
yeah,
by myself.
and I know me, and I almost like I don't want that because I love who I am. Do I want to? Do I want to risk who I could become?
So this is actually very deep, right? So you actually have, whether you realize it or not, subconsciously you have a deep rooted fear of judgment. Because if you're concerned about whether or not you're gonna change because of the success, if you really think about it, money does nothing but expose who you really are. So now you have to ask yourself this question and be transparent. Do I actually trust myself with the success that's coming, or am I afraid that the success that comes magnifies who I am, and then eventually I end up exposing my truth because of that lack of discipline? That's layer number one. Layer number two is you leveraging how people are going to perceive you, and this is actually so healthy to understand. This is actually coaching right here. You leveraging how people are going to perceive you, which gives you permission to stay who you are. I think that's a how do I say this in a nice way? I think that that's a you're is a defense mechanism, right, to support your identity, and you're leveraging that story as you not willing to really commit to a new identity that comes with massive responsibility. So because that's tangible and that's something that's real in your mind, is like, you know what, I don't want to be perceived a certain way because now aesthetically I look different. How about if you were to consider it this way? Man, imagine who I would attract and what type of vibration and frequency I would attract if I was to focus on me, work on my health. Now I get to attract people that are operating in the same frequency, because the way you operate as a healthy John and the way you operate as a unhealthy John is two different frequencies. So now you operating here, you're going to keep attracting the same type of frequency. The more you work on yourself, the more you shift your identity, the more you shift your belief system, that's going to create this shift within you. That level is going to attract people that are operating in a certain level of consciousness. That's going to enhance your life full circle, and now you're not going to worry about these little stories that got you in your head that are keeping you operating in the same level.
And I kind of agree with you there because I will say this podcast has definitely and turning 50 both have been great motivators in me wanting to be more healthier, because something I think I've even said to Sydney is that I need to look the part of people are going to respect me, as a podcaster, I want to be as possible a speaker in the future, If I go up looking the way I am, why are they going to listen to me? Because I haven't evidently done the hard work on my own self to say something, So I do understand that.
Believe it or not, though, John, believe it or not, remember, frequency doesn't discriminate. So, like, at the end of the day, when you feel proud of you, regardless of anything, you can still show up that way, right? So like I was on stages speaking, not being in shape, right? And at the end of the day, like the information and the value is the information and the value. But what happens is this: when you're showing up for yourself, what you tend to do is you tend to operate in a different level of conviction, which puts you in more opportunities, which allows you to exercise the work that you're doing in private a lot greater. So like, for example, like right now, because I've been working on myself, I'm genuinely deep down inside proud of me, and I don't need anybody to be proud of me. I'm operating in such a high frequency, and I'm so convinced in the work that I'm doing that that's allowing doors to open because of that energy that I'm operating in. We have to be very careful on how we use stories, because stories is literally what defines our life, and it defines our actions.
You know,
Well, if you
I love
listen
it.
to episode 2, Dallas
What's that?
Collins, he talks about the story mind.
Oh
Oh,
boy.
just a plug.
Insert
Sorry, Sydney.
insert, insert meme of the story mind right here. This video. Oh boy. And I will say, like, before we start getting into our key takeaways and stuff like that, but I will say that I think that there's something to be said for me, anyways, about frequency doesn't discriminate. I have met people that physically were unhealthy that had a lot of value that they brought to the table. I will say though, that at the age or stage of life, Jeremy, specifically that you and I are at, I have less respect and am less likely to receive wisdom from someone our age and the age demographic and generation that we are in if they do not physically care for themselves, unless, of course, there's mental complications that make it so that they cannot. But if you are able bodied and you've let yourself go at this stage of life, why should I listen to you? Because
Sure.
if you don't have the discipline to take care of your own physical temple, then what value do you bring to the table for me?
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, like, for depending on the level of consciousness that you're operating in, obviously we're in this space, so the expectation is a little bit different, the standard is a little bit different, without a doubt. Like, without a doubt. You know what I'm saying? Where I'm at, man, with ChatGPT, with Google, with YouTube, with so many reels, for me, I watch more what people do than what they say. Because at the end of the day, anybody can sound extremely great. And I know happiness when I see it, right? I know peace when I see it. I know people that are really living it when I see it. And for me, I, like yourself, I go more off of that. So you're absolutely correct. It's you, in my eyes, in our eyes, you lose credibility tremendously by not really showing up for yourself, because you're telling me that this is who you are in private, right? How you show up in public, that's who
Right.
you are in private. And usually that comes with a person that's irresponsible, undisciplined, unfocused, and unwilling to commit to themselves.
And I do know that it can be emotional manifestation that happens in your physical body too. Like when I was at a point in my life after having 3 kids back to back, but going through a lot of trauma with each of my kids in their own capacity, both physically and emotionally. I just started to wear that weight because I was unwilling to address the emotions that I was having because I just didn't want to be like my mom, like how we had parents that struggled with substance abuse. Like all I knew was I didn't want to be like her, and I was trying to avoid things in me that didn't even like really surface in my life. They were on more of a subconscious level until I had kids. And now I've got to deal with this stuff. And so I let my physical self go while draining everything in me, trying to like keep all of this stuff in the closet. And it wasn't until the only thing I felt that I had control over was my physical appearance that I started working through the emotional and the physical at the same time, and it was at the gym. And it has now become a discipline, but I had less respect for myself when I was in that state of well-being, not just because of the lack of discipline and caring for my physical body, but because I knew, regardless of if I was willing to admit it to anybody or not, that I was avoiding the emotional and the mental work too.
Such a great point. Such a great point. I mean, you're really you're speaking my language, like, for real, for real. Because that's one of the, I think that's when it comes down to personal development. I think one of the fastest ways to personally develop yourself is by showing up for yourself physically, right? Like you can decide what to eat, what not to eat. You can decide whether you can exercise or not. There's a lot of moving factors. There's a lot of variables when it comes down to many things. But one thing every human has the choice to decide is what's gonna go in their mouth and what they're gonna do with their physical body. And when you can at least start there, and you start to have like just practice positive rituals through that, you would be surprised on the momentum that happens mentally and emotionally because of that work.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, no doubt.
Wow, I know we could go for hours
Oh my
and
God, yeah.
talk about stuff. But it is getting to that point where we need to wrap up this episode. So, it's time for our key takeaways.
Key takeaways.
And I guess my key takeaway is that the mental wealth is definitely a priority. If you're not happy with yourself, if you're not mentally wealthy, then anything else that you do is going to lack enjoyment. And so to really investing in your mental wealth, investing in your in your in yourself is so important, and it is worth every cent you invest. And again, what you invest is what you get out.
100%.
You know, for me, I really loved what you said about frequency doesn't discriminate. And I don't know that I've heard it said that way before, but it really resonated with me because it goes kind of back to that birds of a feather flock together sort of thing. But those birds can look really different. Like you can have the successful person whose life is emotionally in shambles. And if you look at the sum of the five people that they're around the most, I guarantee that they're hanging out with similar broken people. On the flip side of that coin, you can have somebody that maybe in an economical status is very low in the income bracket for whatever it is, but they're wealthy emotionally and in their relationships and where they invest their time. I think that people place too much value on materialistic things in general. And for me, it's been really relevant in choosing business partners in this podcast and my AI mobile application, all of the things that I do, because now I look at people for what value they bring rather than, sorry, I'm going to pause. No, it's because of the green screen. I'll say what I said again because I don't want him to have to edit that out. Now I look at business partners for what value they bring, not just monetarily. I don't need the money. It's like, what value do you contribute to my life emotionally and mentally? How does John challenge Sydney and encourage me to grow and be a better person, both for the sake of the experience that guests have on our show and the relationships that we foster and develop here, but also like, how am I challenging and feeding him in the same regard? So like that frequency doesn't discriminate, and it doesn't mean that you hang out with people who are exactly like you, but what are you putting out there to people?
Correct. Correct. I love that. And just to give your viewers, whoever listens to this, some context on the power of frequency. So frequency is the foundation to everything, right? So frequency is gonna lead to an intuition. That intuition is gonna lead to a mental impulse. That mental impulse is gonna lead to an action. That action is gonna lead to a result. So you have to ask yourself in that process, right? Of like, okay, let's go from the outcome. If I'm dissatisfied with the outcome, let me ask myself, what frequency am I operating in? And the beautiful thing about it is that there's a frequency chart, right? There's a frequency chart. You got shame in the bottom. You have guilt. You have apathy. You have fear. You have desire. You have anger. You have neutrality, willingness, peace, love, joy, peace, enlightenment, right? You can ask yourself like, what's the frequency? Because that frequency is creating a domino effect that's leading to that feeling. That feeling is leading to that thought. That thought is leading to that behavior, and that behavior is leading to that action. So, like, I always like to go inward, and I always like to ask myself, okay, this is the outcome, or this is the outcome that I want. Let me reverse engineer this outcome, and let me ask myself, what frequency am I operating in? Because if this is the right domino, it's going to create the proper effect.
Absolutely. And there was a lot of value in this whole episode, but I always ask people, if their internet had gone out or whatever, and they only got to take away one piece of advice, one piece of wisdom from this show today, what would you want them to take away from all of the things that we've talked about?
Your first, second, and third without feeling guilty about that. Because at the end of the day, you can never give your partner, your children, your business the best of you if you're not the best of you. And when you really start shifting from the need of significance to the needs of growth and contribution, and you really prioritize yourself every single day, that feeling of being proud of you is gonna allow people that you care for, including the world that you may not even know, the opportunity to truly benefit from the best version of you. I believe that with all of my heart. I struggle with saying no. I struggle with implementing boundaries. I struggle with, making sure that I take care of my needs before I take care of somebody else's. And when I shifted that, the world revolved around me. I no longer revolved around the world.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Great mic drop moment.
So I'm gonna give you guys some gifts. I need an address. I want to send you guys over some books, A Better You, which explains a little bit about my story to give you some more in-depth concept of like what I actually did to transform from this human being that was once broken, suicidal, angry, anxious, depressed, to now a person that I can honestly say with all of my heart I am genuinely proud of, and I have massive conviction and really and no longer emotionally dependent on my reality changing because of how mentally wealthy I am. I want to give you guys that book, and I want to offer 5 slots for 15-minute growth sessions where absolutely zero expectations. If anybody have any questions, I'm going to give you guys the link to that. Any questions, any thoughts, they're like, man, for some reason this energy kind of like did something for me. I want to offer 5 of your guests a free 15-minute growth call, like I said, with no expectations, so that they can ask whatever they want to ask, so that we can at least get them on their proper address to their growth journey.
And this is the part of the
Thank you.
show where we do ask people to come in and put their key takeaways in the comments. So drop in there your key takeaways. Jeremy's giving away a couple extra, so we'll figure out how to raffle those off and make sure that that link is sent to the 5 winners. The other key takeaway that I had is that multi-level marketing is not John's greater purpose. And I just wanted to point out that I don't know if multi-level marketing is anyone's greater purpose. So just like nobody take that key takeaway from me. I thought that was hilarious. The way that you were like, that was not my calling. I'm like, is it anyone's? Like MLM? Like, are you for real?
Yeah,
This was
so
awesome. I'm really grateful at this opportunity. I'm really grateful, Sydney, for you and for you, John. You guys are definitely setting a different standard in the podcast space, and I hope that we can continue to nurture this connection. And anything that I can do for you guys, both personally and professionally, I am here to serve and be an asset to both of your lives.
thank you. We appreciate that. And if you're going to comment below, we comment on either YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, as they're the 3 places where we are currently putting out the episodes, and we will see your comments there. And to end this, we end with our final segment is called the Final 5.
Final 5.
So me and Sydney are going to ask you 5 questions, and we're going to wrap this up. The first question is, who is your hero and why?
My mother, for sure. Resilience, overcame so much, and the one thing that I was never lacking is love despite her pain. So for sure she would forever be on that pedestal.
That's awesome. And then the second question for you is going to be, what role does accountability first have to play in emotional growth? I know that's kind of a loaded question, but like if somebody's just kind of starting out in this journey, where does accountability have to factor into starting this journey to emotional growth and mental wealth?
I think once you can own that everything is your fault, and you no longer give that power to anybody else, that's the first step to really taking your power back. So yes, I had every reason to blame and I had every reason to justify, but the moment that I took powers into my own hand and I realized that I'm accountable for everything, whether it's my fault or not, because I understand that I attract everything, that's when the ball is in your court. And as long as you can keep the ball in your court, you can really, really, really create magic with that accountability.
Mm. The next question is either what is one book or one quote or one verse that either has had the greatest impact on you or a saying that you live by or, is your life motto and why?
So for me, it's let's grow. When I was struggling, whenever I have my moments of insecurities, my moments of doubt, my moments of fear, that it still happens to this day, I just tell myself, let's grow, let's grow, let's grow, let's lean into the adversity, let's lean into the problems, let's lean into the BS, because by us leaning into that, growth happens. So it's a simple two word that comes with so much power, so much energy, so much intensity, because it's a reminder that no matter what happens with the outcome, the lessons are invaluable no matter what. So there's no losing.
Yeah, that's good. I like it. It's simple, but it's powerful when actually
Powerful.
executed on.
Exactly.
Uh, my next question for you is, what's your favorite way to completely unplug when your brain's on overload with all that you got going on? The book and dad and business. What do you do when you need it? Just a break.
Roll on the floor with my children, kiss on my baby. I got a 1 year old, kiss on my baby, kiss on my daughter, and just really truly be present with them and go to their level mentally, right? Like I'm talking about, like I am a kid at heart, and my kids give me the opportunity to be that, to live my childhood through them. So I do the kid thing. I'm the dad that goes down the slide. I'm the dad that jumps off of the kitchen table, and I'm the dad that jumps on the couches. Like I'm that dad. So that's my way of completely disconnecting, and that silliness just continues to nurture and enhance my joy.
It's awesome.
And the final question is if you could have a conversation and a beer or you said you don't drink, so conversation and a coffee, living or dead with one person, who would that be?
It would for sure be God, and it's simply to ask Him, am I doing what was meant for me, and what else can I do to be the best representation of you that I can possibly be.
Love that. That's awesome. Jeremy, if our listeners want to find you or connect with you, how can they do that? Where can we link your social media or email or website? What you got for us?
So I have for all my social media is inspired by unity. That's on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook. I got my regular page that we're connected to, Jeremy Rodriguez, where I do a lot of my writing. My email is inspiredbyunity@gmail.com. And then my website is inspiredbyunity.com. It's under construction right now, but email is the fastest way. My assistant responds to everybody relatively quickly. So if anybody has any questions, any thoughts, anything of anything, shoot them over my way. And if people want to go a little bit more in depth, I'm gonna send you guys over the link of my 15-minute growth call, and we can take it from there.
And real quick before we end, I just want to say this because your last answer to your last question. And I think a lot of people ask, want to know from God if they're doing, they're living their purpose. And one of the things that I think I've learned through my life is that it's not what we do, it's who we do it for.
For sure.
And I think living God's purpose, I think people spend too much time trying to figure out, am I living my purpose? Instead of just doing everything you can for God.
For
That's
sure.
your purpose. And so you're doing it, bro. Keep up the good work. And if you do it for him, you're living your purpose. So.
Absolutely. All the glory goes to him always. Listen, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. I have the privilege of now going to a Lil Wayne concert, so I'm going to go get ready to get fired up and sing my lungs away. So you guys have a beautiful day. And again, keep in contact with whatever I can do for you guys in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, and remember, when we take the time to hear someone's story, it gives us the opportunity to find common ground. Thank you again, Jeremy, for being our guest today. For Sydney and myself, it has been our pleasure to be your host, and you have been listening to the Common Ground Podcast.
And that's it for today's episode of the Common Ground podcast. We hope you're leaving with a little more perspective, a little more purpose, and a whole lot more inspiration.
So thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it. Thank you to our special guest.
If today's conversation moved you, encouraged you, or challenged you in any way, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, rate it, leave us a review. Your support helps us reach more people who need to find their own common ground.
So for John Fletcher and Sydney Curtin,
we'll see you right here next week, same time, same place on the Common Ground podcast. Make it a great week. And that's it for today's episode of the Common Ground podcast. We hope you're leaving with a little more perspective, a little more purpose, and a whole lot more inspiration.
So thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it. Thank you to our special guest.
If today's conversation moved you, encouraged you, or challenged you in any way, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, rate it, leave us a review. Your support helps us reach more people who need to find their own common ground.
So for John Fletcher and Sydney Curtin,
we'll see you right here next week, same time, same place on the Common Ground podcast. Make it a great week.